Hello everyone. Let's look at one of the difficult question, not a difficult question, I mean one of the very simple question, but at times when again, my main reason behind making these kind of videos is just to let you know how a simple question can be so much twisted, and basically they'll try to make it difficult, and they'll try to confuse you. Okay. And if you have not watched our videos, or if you haven't done a lot of practice, in that case you'll face little bit difficulty to understand the key words where you have to focus. So this is one of the example. So the question is on the emergency change. All right. So in case if you haven't watched the video on the emergency changes, I am putting that video first, so you can watch the entire video on that emergency changes, and after that we will look at this question. Alright, let's look at the next topic, which is emergency changes. Now we have already discussed about the formal process, the formal procedure, the formal steps. Alright, but will all these steps still be applicable in case of emergency change? Yes or no? We'll discuss about that. But before discussing about that, the important thing to discuss is what exactly do we mean when we say emergency change. Whenever there is a critical change, or maybe you can say a critical bug or error, and in that case we can't wait for a long time. It has to be done within a short notice, a short time. It has to be deployed, it has to be implemented in a very short period of time. That comes under the emergency change. Alright, critical change or critical bug or error. Now in case of emergency changes, we are pushing the change into production in short notice or time. Alright, so there will be no formal process initially. Alright, at the time of change there will not be so lengthy process, but after the change, once the change is done, then entire process is still needed. All your formal request for change, document form, approval, documentation, everything will still be needed, but after the change. All right. So how this thing is done, we'll discuss about that. So basically what we have discussed, in case of emergency change, we have discussed that emergency change occurs in case of critical change or critical bugs or errors. So basically we are pushing this change, or we are implementing or deploying this change in a short period or a short notice. All right, and there will be no formal process. I mean, there will be a process, but not as lengthy as we have discussed earlier. All right. And after the change, once the change is implemented, once the change is deployed, afterwards entire process is still needed. All your formal request for change, approval, documentation, everything will still be there, but it will come after the change. All right. Now there is also something known as special logon IDs or emergency IDs. There is one question also in your CISA QAE. All right. Now that question was with respect to the development team. Because of some emergency change, the development team wants to access the production environment. All right, the development team wants to access the production environment. So in that case, there has to be what? There has to be a emergency ID or special logon ID. This ID should be a temporary ID. First of all, this access should be a temporary access, and there has to be what? A proper accountability. Proper accountability should be established. How can accountability be established? When that ID is linked to a specific individual. All right, so a special individual ID needs to be created. All right, and that too for a temporary period. Afterwards that ID can be removed. All right, for all these things there will be a team which they have mentioned as production support group. They have mentioned production support group in your QAE. So basically there will be a team. All right, see, in this case we want, try to understand, our intention is what? It's an emergency change, so we can't wait for a lengthy process. All right, we want that change to be made. But again, we don't want any unauthorized change, we don't want any unnecessary change. All right, so all the process will still be there, but it will be there afterwards. All right, but in case the development team wants to access the production environment, first of all, it is not allowed, but in case of emergency change, it can be allowed. All right, but there has to be a proper accountability should be established. All right, there has to be a team who should look after all these things, and it should be what they should make a special individual ID. It should be a temporary ID. Once the work is done, that ID should be removed. All right then, they have also mentioned about firefighter ID. If you read that question in your QA, they have also mentioned about firefighter ID in one of the option. Now firefighter ID, it's a shared ID, but we don't want a shared ID, we want a specific ID so that the accountability is established. All right, so basically in that case we will use what, we will use a special logon ID, emergency ID. All right, and that will be a temporary ID. Afterwards it will be removed. All right, so use of temporary individual specific ID, emergency ID, plus monitor the activity, plus removal of ID afterwards. All right, and once that change is done, afterwards the entire process will still be applicable. All right, but it is very risky. It is very risky, and that is why they have also mentioned this thing in your review manual, that keep these kind of emergency changes as less as possible. All right, it is very risky and we should keep these emergency changes as less as possible. Now let's proceed ahead. Now, if there is weak change management process, CMP is nothing but change management process. Change management process. If there is weak change management process, risk of unauthorized changes, risk of unauthorized changes increases. If there is weak change management process, risk of unauthorized changes increases. But can we conclude that the fraud has also increased, or that there is an increase in the fraud? Can we conclude that? Can an IS auditor conclude that? It is my question to you. Can an IS auditor conclude that the fraud is also high because there is weak change management process? No. We have discussed in domain 1. Now your domain 1 concepts will work over here. Your domain 1 concepts will be helpful to you. We have discussed in domain 1 as compliance test and substantive test. There we have discussed that compliance test, it is also called as test of controls. All right, see, change management process, it's a control. We are testing the controls, we are doing the compliance test. If the compliance test, if this is weak, can we conclude there is a fraud? No, we have to check in detail also. All right, so substantive test, it is not yet done in this case. What is substantive test? Test of details. All right, test of details, this is not yet done in this case. All right, we can just say that the risk of unauthorized change has increased. We cannot say that the fraud is there. All right, because we are doing what? We are doing compliance testing and not the substantive testing. All right, so your domain 1 concept is linked over here. All right, so guys, I hope that everyone have watched the video. All right, so let's try to solve this question. Which of the following should be included? Now, since you have watched the video, you won't face that much difficulty, but again, these kind of questions help us to understand, do we have that correct reading skills, to identify the hidden hints in the question, to identify where to focus and where not to focus. So let's read the question. Which of the following should be included in emergency change control procedures? Option number A, use an emergency ID. Use of an emergency ID very much required to move production programs into development. Option number B, request that the help desk make the changes. Option number C, update production source libraries to reflect the changes. Option number D, obtain user management approval before implementing the changes. Guys, so questions like these, at times, what happens is that when you are giving the exam, and since you have also watched my video and there we have spoken about the emergency ID. Okay, what happens is that in the exam hall we mark the answers, and we don't even read the options properly. Okay, now if you read this question properly, okay, you can just pause this video and you can yourself read the entire question. Option number A says that use an emergency ID. Till here everything was right. To move production programs into development, it is talking in the reverse way. We want to push the changes in the production. It is talking about moving production into development, right? It is saying something opposite, right? So that's the reason this is not the right option, but most of the people will go with this option, right? But this is not the right option for this reason. If you divide the sentences into various parts, this is how you can identify these kind of tricky questions. So the best way to solve this kind of question is to make sure you're dividing each and every line as much as possible. So use an emergency ID. Till here everything was right. To move production into development, no, right? Option number B is request that the help desk make the changes, not necessary, and in fact it is emergency, right? You don't have time, it's a critical bug, okay, or critical change is required, so not necessary that you will have to request them. In fact, we have discussed that even the request for change and everything will be done afterwards, right? So option number B will not be the correct option. Option number D, obtain user management approval before, no. Okay, and this is what emergency change is all about, right? You will do it afterwards, and you will take the approval afterwards. So option number D is also not the correct option. The only option left is option number C. But again, you know what, I have discussed these kind of questions in my videos, where I have told you that there at times there will be some questions where 3 options are wrong and the 4th option is also not looking the best option. It is not the best option. At times the 4th option won't even make sense, but these questions are drafted so that people make mistakes, so this is also same kind of question. Option number C says update production source libraries to reflect the changes. This is something which we already know. This is the intention, right? Which of the following should be included in the emergency change control procedure? This is the intent, right? And here the intent is the right answer. Update production source libraries to reflect the changes. This is something which we know, right? But when 3 options doesn't make sense, no need to apply your brain, go with the 4th option. So the correct answer over here is option number C, update production source libraries to reflect the changes, right? Most of the people have gone with option number A, but that is not the right option. In fact, when I looked at, the answer for this question at so many places, at times I have seen the answer to be option number A, but no, this is not the right option, right? And if your concept is clear, see how to deal with these kind of questions. Is that, first understand the concept. So I hope that everyone have watched the video on the emergency changes, so you know the concept of emergency changes. Very important topic, change management. You know the concept. Then second step should be to break the question as much as possible. Always, you know, you have to follow this approach, zero trust. We use this term in security, zero trust, right? So in the exam also you have to follow this approach, zero trust. You should not trust even a simple question, even if you have seen that kind of question anywhere in the dumps or in the official QE, wherever, never ever trust that question. You have to have zero trust. So follow this approach and always try to divide the questions as much as possible, right? And this is how you will get to know the right answer. Anyways, so I hope this video made sense, and all right then.